once I've actually attacked my partner or opponent, I need to be cognizant of certain aspects of my position. As we had talked about in the first DVD, it's crucial. In that first module I discussed how crucial it is when I'm driving through, after I've lowered my level and I'm drop stepping through, my momentum goes into my opponent. My level goes down. My trajectory is parallel to the mat, or if I could, even slightly upward, but certainly not down. I want my partner or opponent to receive the impact of my shoulder. Now, when I attack, I've lowered my level. I'm going to step. I'm going to make that contact before my knee hits. And as we talked about before as well, it's crucial that this rear leg follows up immediately. So when this knee hits, this leg is in position almost instantaneously. So I'm attacking, boom. I lower my level, I come in, boom. This leg must follow up immediately. Now, once I'm actually in, where do I want to be? Now, before I actually go over that, I want to emphasize while I'm talking about these positions in the double leg, when we go over single and high crotch, I don't camp out in here, and that's really important. When I attack a double, I want to finish it right away. But that being said, within the context of this position, it's important to be aware of certain principles of your position and movement. So, I'm not saying that we're going to spend a lot of time in here. When I attack, I want to drive or I want to finish it off immediately, or at least as quickly as possible. But simply for instructional purposes, I'm going to be down here for a lot longer than I would be, of course, if I was actually attacking my opponent. If I have not been successful at attacking to where I knocked my opponent down, I want my shoulder to be in the lower part of his abdomen, or belt line, sort of in that area. I want my head to be up, not down, not in front. I want it up and to the side. I want the knee that's down to be fairly close to his center of gravity. Don't want it out here. I want this foot in back to be tucked to the side, not like this. I want it to be tucked to the side. One of the reasons why I want it to be tucked to the side is if it's like this, he can grab it a lot easier. Grab. Okay? Now, if it's down, he can't grab it as easier. Notice, too, if it's down, if he tries to reach, he must go further over me, and it's much easier to lift. If I'm here, this tends to make me more forward. Here, I'm in a little bit better position, and it's more difficult for him to attack this leg. The other thing that's important is this leg has got to be in a position where it can push at an angle towards my opponent. Because ultimately, when I come in this position, I want to chop, drive with my head, and push with my foot. I get push power here. It goes into my head. I'm pushing, I'm looking that way, and I'm chopping on this side here, on the far side. Now, I've attacked on my way in. I have not been successful in initially just knocking him down. I got stuck here. Okay, so what am I going to do? It's important that I want to get as deep as possible with my grip. Not here, but here. You'll notice I'm kind of behind the crease of his knees here, over the top of his calves. Notice what I do when I pull in. I pull in like this. I pull in this way, pushing my chest out, using my lats. I'm not going to try to use my biceps. This is not as strong for me to pull in. So what I'm going to do is not come here. Notice, holding his powerful legs here with my hands to where I'm really using the strength of my arms is not going to be a good match. However, if I come in much deeper, okay, and I'm trying to use more of my lats and my chest, that makes it a little bit more favorable for me. So I'm going to come down and in. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm coming down and in. When I make contact, I want to be incredibly tight here. This foot's down, and I'm pushing this in this direction. Now, it's fundamental that as soon as I can, I transfer his weight from these two legs equally. Say if he weighs 100 pounds, there's 50 pounds here and 50 pounds here, that I transfer the weight immediately to the far leg. When I'm in here, immediately I need to thrust and I need to push the weight to this far leg. Even if I don't get him all the way off this foot, I need to shift the weight. That is my first priority if I get stuck down here. When I attack a double leg, my goal is to be able to finish it in one series of movements. The setup, driving through, bringing my opponent down, being able to get down, and being able to get on top. So, say for example, with a head snap or head rake, I've popped, I've lowered my level. When I come in, I'm going to drive in here, and I'm going to finish immediately. That's very important that that's your goal. Now, some things that will facilitate that happening. One, make sure, you can come up just a little bit for demonstration purposes here. Make sure I lower my level and I come in parallel to the ground, and that I make contact with Colby before my knee hits, if possible. Okay? I definitely don't want my trajectory to go down. When I attack the double, I lower my level, and the trajectory of my attack is in. I do not want the trajectory of my attack to go down. If I start with my level high, there's a tendency for my trajectory to go down. If I've lowered my level properly from the get-go, there's a tendency for that preparation or that level lowering to be successful in allowing me to go more parallel to the mat. That will allow more transfer of energy into my opponent. Now, one thing that's crucial when you do a double is the first moment of contact. And a lot of people, I think, make a mistake when doing the double because they don't concentrate on this first moment. The first moment of contact, my opponent is typically going to be pulling his legs back or pushing his hips down, sprawling, whatever. They're going to have some type of a defensive maneuver. It's kind of like they're a spring and they're going to try to spring that spring, okay? And if I can come in initially very hard, I've lowered my level, and when I attack in here, I am very rigid. When I make contact, my hands over the calves, my forearms are deep behind his knees, not cupping here. This way, my chest is pushing in, my head is tight. There's a lot of contact between his upper leg here, his thigh, and my chest. Immediately upon making contact, I want to be very tight so that when he makes that initial move back, he's sprung his spring unsuccessfully. Watch this. If I come in more lackadaisically, even with a good shot in terms of lowering my level and driving through, if I haven't grabbed his legs sufficiently, all of a sudden I have a post against me. This is a very difficult position for me to be fighting in here. I allowed him to get his legs back or to get his hips down with his sprawl. But if I've lowered my level and I come in and attack and I'm so tight that when he sprawls back, he's got nothing, now I'm going to finish. And that, I think, is an important and critical point when you do a double leg. That initial contact, you're like steel. When I make contact, boom, it's very tight. Initially, even as I'm driving through, I'm not so much trying to pull him towards me, I'm just keeping everything tight so that when he tries to defend, he's gone nowhere. At that point, he's sprung his spring, and it'll be easy for me to either chop or lift. And so that point is critical on the double. And a mistake a lot of people make is they're more like spaghetti with their arms. They shoot in here, they're not grabbing deep around the leg, or they're not holding the leg in tight. Their head is low, there's contact, or there's less contact between the chest and the leg. They're not up here, they're not deep. When you come in initially, on that initial attack, everything's got to be rigid like steel. You make contact, boom, even as I'm driving, everything is very, very tight. If it's tight, even though he sprawls back, he'll have gained very little in terms of improving his position relative to yours. If I have not been able to get in to my opponent in a way that I was able to finish it right from the get-go, sometimes I will get stuck on the mat here. So I've lowered my level, I've come in and I've attacked, and I'm tight. He's tried to sprawl, okay, but I'm keeping tight in here initially. It's important that I maintain certain aspects of my position while I then begin my next change of direction or my next change of motion so that I can hopefully score on my opponent. I'm not going to be down here for very long. If I'm down here for very long, I'm more likely to lose this position. But that being said, and while I'm spending a fair amount of time discussing this position down here, it's critical that you can move away from it as quickly as you can. But there are certain things that will help you maintain this position so that your opponent won't get an increasingly favorable position relative to yours, if you can maintain certain aspects of position here. One, this foot has to be in a position where it can push into your opponent. If it's too far forward and he pops his hips back, I've got no post this way. I'm going to go back. On the other hand, if it's too far backward, he pulls me forward, I've got nothing to hold me up. So it's somewhere in between, and I can't tell you exactly where that is. You got to figure that out for yourself with your own body build. But one thing that's crucial is it's not real far forward, it's not real far back, it's somewhere a little bit in front of your opponent and a little bit out to the side. And you just got to figure out where that is for you. It has to be such that you can maintain a sufficient level with your shoulder into your opponent's lower abdomen or belt line. It has to be sufficient so that you can maintain a lot of contact, no space between your chest and your opponent's thigh. It's got to be a position where you can grab around the legs deep so that I'm cupping the back of his knees, not with my hands, using my arm muscles, which aren't very strong, but with my arms, my forearms very deep, pushing my chest in and trying to use my lats. Using my lat muscles are much stronger than just trying to pull in, like with my biceps. With a shallow grip, I'd rather get much deeper and push in with my chest, using my back and my lats and my chest. That's a much more powerful position. That'll be a much more rigid frame or base. So I'm in this position here. The next step is for me to make sure that this foot and back is down. If it's up, it can be grabbed. That's no good for me. If it's down, it's more difficult for him to grab it. If he does try, he's got to reach over further if my ankle is down than if it's higher up, of course. The other thing is, this foot here should never be at this angle out here, easy to grab. I tuck it in, and I'll show you a little exercise in a moment, but I keep it tucked in here. It's not out here, where all of a sudden now my angle is getting very unfavorable relative to my opponent.